Howdy, howdy, it's the Devil here, and welcome to a quick video explanation of my army list for Soteks tabletop tournament. Now, in these tournaments, you bring one list to fight them all. You don't know who you're going to play, what map you're going to be on, what factions you're going to be up against, anything. And, mirror matches are possible, and they do happen, so every faction has to sort of pick a list. And that's the list they're going to play the whole tournament with. Now, I did enter because I have this Friday off, so I have time to play in the tournament. So I thought I would actually have a discussion about my list before the tournament, and then I could actually look at it after and see how the list performed, and sort of analyze my thinking after the fact as I go through this. So I'm going to go through my list. Slowly sort of thinking about the picks that I have, and I'll just share that with you guys, and then afterwards I'll look at this video and consider my picks again and look at rebuilding a list for future. Now, and at this time I'll have sort of some of the lists that I went up against. Now it might just be one and done, and maybe I win one. I don't know how it's going to go. I really don't. I wanted to bring a list that was going to be flexible and robust in a lot of situations, and so this is sort of the list that I settled on. So the leadership group is no surprise to anyone who plays Dwarfs. Rune Lord, and the only ability he has is to master Rune of Wrath and Rune. He's very cheap at 1062, no items. We did bring the Rune Smith to get the Rune of Wrath and Rune, so that we can, if the enemy has an expensive target, we can whittle it down with our runes, or if they have something really fast and we need to pin it, we can double cast that to lock them down for 9 seconds or 18 seconds. But we also brought him with the Hammer of Karak draws, and this is a good way to also to lock down a very powerful unit. For 50 seconds, you basically give it minus 44 melee attack, minus 25% weapon damage. Very good on, like a powerful lord or a big beast or something like that, or even shutting down like Swordmaster or Hoeth or really strong infantry. And sort of that's my leadership core. I wanted to go with the rest of my army. I wanted it to be fairly robust for the line. I did bring, so I have a main line of Longbeards, and I wanted to have a zero leftover, a perfect spend. So the chevrons just worked out. I wanted to get as many chevrons on these guys as possible because they do get 2 extra melee defense and 1 extra melee attack. So it's a very efficient way to spend a chevron. So we got 5 Longbeards, and then on my edges I have 2 Longbeards with great weapons. Now Longbeards with great weapons are armor piercing. They're not really for an infantry engagement, though they can support an infantry engagement. If one of my frontline Longbeards go down, they can fill in a gap for a while. They're really anti-large. They do have charge defense against large, and they're pretty decent against cavalry. They have good mass. Same with the regular Longbeards, have good mass. So it's a pretty robust line. It gives me a fairly wide line. I also have 2 miners with blasting charges. That is, to deal with chaff, to deal with lightning armored foes, like say come up against dark elves and they have witch elves, and maybe I'll be able to pull off the trick that we talked about in the last video, where I double up these miners with blasting charges and decimate something. It would be really fun to do it. I don't know if I'll make it happen. But really, they're a support unit meant to use their blasting charges and then get back into my line and defend my ranged units. Now, I do have the Dragonback Slayers. They go very well with 1 Runesmith, 1 Rune of Wrath and Rune. That's a 48% speed debuff, and they have a 36% speed debuff. And they do have the fire damage debuff as well. The other reason I wanted the Longbeards is they're all immune to psychology. That's pretty important, and they do encourage, they're just a solid all-around frontline unit. Now, for the ranged, I sort of brought one representation from everything, really. I wanted some, some non-armor piercing missile damage, because there's always going to be something that doesn't have a lot of armor, and I picked the Ranger so I can Vanguard deploy and sort of get in someone's face. And I have the Ulthar's Raiders, who are awesome in so many matchups. They just have that marked by Ulthar for the minus 30 armor, minus 24 missile parry, minus 22% missile resistance. Very, very strong effect. And of course I got Thunders. Base Thunders are actually really good. that decent enough range at 145 armor piercing, and I do have the Iron Drakes with Trollhammer torpedoes, which are a very powerful backline unit as well. And you know, with these 4 units in the backline, you know, prepared for most things. You know, I am going to struggle against if someone has lots of chariots, though, for example. But I can put the herd on them because I can slow them down and kill one at a time. And, of course, I brought 1 gyrocopter with the brimstone guns. It's just fast to get around the map, does fire damage and anti-large. And I really do... I have been enjoying this concept of having 1 gyrocopter. I have no artillery just because I have no idea what maps I'm going to be playing on. It's just too risky to bring artillery, and I imagine that'll be the same with pretty much everyone else. I mean, I never really watched, like, I've been watching Soteks tournaments, and I do watch them because I really enjoy that format in terms of watching how the tournament plays out, and I've seen other dwarf builds do pretty well. I think dwarfs are very well suited to this sort of format because if you know you're facing dwarves, it's actually pretty easy to pick. You know, you just pick all your armor-piercing infantry, and voila, done. You know, it's if you have chariots, bring your chariots. If you have armor-piercing missiles, bring those. You know, it's a pretty straightforward formula to try and counter and combat dwarfs usually. So when you're in an all-comers tournament, you have to be ready for Skaven. You have to be ready for Lizardmen, you have to be ready for Vampire Counts, Vampire Coast, you know, so you can't just prepare for the Dowie, and so that makes the Dowie lists are going to be relatively strong, particularly because Dowie infantry in the Longbeard is so good. And, you know, and I think this is a reasonable list. I mean, I didn't look at the other lists, and there have been some other lists, you know, I have watched this, and I've seen the Dowie win it. I've seen 2 dwarf armies go pretty far in the same tournament. There hasn't been a dwarf army for a little while, so we'll see how that plays out. You know, if I'm the only Dowie player, I hope I'll be the only Dowie player, and we'll see what matchups we get. Like, you know, we could get an absolutely brutal matchup first go around. You know, maybe we get Skaven and they have 3 Doomflayers and 2 Warplock Jezzails, and that's it for the tournament. You know, there is still always going to be luck of the draw, sort of involved in how everything plays out. But we'll do our best to actually make this army function. You know, it is a little bit. My backlines are kind of really have 5 different. Ranged with the Gyrocopter, Iron Drakes, Althars, Raiders, Thunders, and Rangers, but I think they're all good in their own right now. Because I don't know what's coming, I can't really mass, you know, all Rangers or all Thunders or all Iron Drakes because I really don't know. I mean, I could do all Iron Drakes, 3 Iron Drakes. A very, very powerful Dowie build is this Rune Lord and Runesmith with long beards and then Iron Drakes, 3 Iron Drakes in the back. And, you know, just 1 gyrocopter. I mean, that's a really, really strong build as well. But I wanted to have a little bit of variety just for some fun. And I like the idea of having 2 stealth vanguard units because, you know, getting in someone's face really does matter. And, you know, being able to have it so they can't see where you're deployed right away also matters when they're approaching. They're going to eventually find you, but they're going to be under pressure from the gyrocopter. And you know, if someone brings lots of flyers, it's okay. I can fly my gyrocopter back to my support. Thunders are really strong against air units because their bullets fire so fast. They're quite accurate. So as soon as you're sort of within 150 meters of my range, you're going to get tore up. Even if you have something pretty solid like a dragon or anything like that, this back line will actually be able to defend against that because he's marked by Ulthar along with the Rangers, Thunders, and if they get close enough, the Iron Drakes will just tear them to shreds. So, and I do have a threatening back line in that I can slow things down with the Dragonback Slayers and the Rune of Wrath and Rune. So I can pin, if someone brings 2 chariots, I can pin and kill one and then try and deal with the other. If someone brings 4 chariots, so we're going to be a real problem. You know, is what it is, though. You can't prepare for everything, and that's sort of the fun part of this tournament. Is you sort of have to think about your list in terms of how maximizing its flexibility and capability. And this is sort of my first go at this style of tournament and building this type of list. So I will probably post this after the tournament, shortly after the tournament, and I think it's 1:30 Central Standard Time Friday. I think I'm recording this sort of Tuesday, because I talked to Sotek and got entered, and he got me on the list and said, okay, just submit your army. So I submitted it, and I wanted to have a sort of a chat about it and go through my thinking beforehand, because it's always interesting to look at your thinking before and after something to really see where was your mind, and where did it start and where did it end up, and which units did you really like. I mean, obviously I have a Dowie list for against every single faction, and I've played competitively against every single faction, and when I look at the potential of what can be out there, I think if this list feels reasonable, because there are a few units that are just good all around. Like the leadership is, I mean, that's sort of I don't think anyone would argue that that's the optimum leadership, that the Runesmith and the Rune Lord together with the sort of that package. I mean, you could argue the Hammer of Carrick draws, but it really, for what, 152 gold, it eliminates a 1200 gold unit for 50 seconds. So it is too good to pass up, and you always get it off. If you go up against something like Mazda Mundi on Zlak, he's basically, he's still going to run around and to be disruptive, but he's not going to do a ton of damage for a whole 50 seconds. So it's one of those things that's actually very, very useful. Now, as far as everything else goes, Miner's blasting charges are good, but I didn't want to mass them. But bringing a couple to get their blasting charges off and then just run around and help defend my backline, I think is a good idea. And then having the Dragonback Slayers and the 2 Longbeards to be the main defense of the backline, I think is really... I don't know if it's going to be enough for 4 units in that backline. It may or may not. You always lose something. When you're playing against a competitive player, I mean, they're always going to breach your lines at some point, punch a hole and get something back there, whether it's, even like aerial units like bats or harpies or carrion or stuff like that, or they have the dogs, or they bring them in the back, or cavalry. You can only defend so much, but I think that, all the, Dragonback Slayers have charge defense against large as well, I think. Yep, charge defense against large, and so do the 2 Longbeards. So they'll get back there and they'll be able to take out, some of these units, but they're going to pay the price. They're going to pay a price, maybe not the ultimate price, and sort of that's the idea. So really looking forward to this tournament. I've really wanted to play in it for a while. I just have not had a Friday off to get into it, and work's been super busy for all of 2019, actually, if I'm honest. Especially sort of February through June, and things are starting to just slow down a little bit, and I have some time, so I'm very happy to be in this tournament. I hope that I do well, whether I win or I lose. I mean, I hope I perform well, and at least play my build relatively well, so that I can give the Dowie a good showing for everybody. My biggest worry is that I just shit the bed and do really poorly, and and I just don't want to embarrass myself. Obviously, I want to play reasonably well. And the problem is, there's some really, really great players that play in this tournament. Falcon on Aerocrastic, and I've seen guys like top tier tournament players playing it. So if I play one of those guys, hopefully it's not a crushing loss. Hopefully it's at least I give them a run. And I play decent enough so that they at least have to work for it. That's my hope. Anyways, with that said, love to hear from you in the comments. Hopefully you've watched my 1 game or 2 games. I don't know if my goal is to play 2 games at least. So that's my hope. But if I just play 1 game and have a crushing defeat against a world-class player, it is what it is. Look forward to hearing from you down below. You'll have already seen my games, and you'll be able to look at my list. And then after I post my game, obviously the games will be on Soteks. I will probably cast my own games again, and then I'll have a look at this, and then I'll do sort of an after-action report where I look at my thoughts of the build beforehand, the way that I played, and then kind of the results and the changes that I would make. And I would love to hear from you guys. I really, really love comments, and it is the funnest part for me is to have these discussions on units and builds and gameplay and ideas. I mean, I get so many ideas, I can't do everything. I mean, I just don't have enough time in my life to play all the configurations and all the builds and all the units and everything else like that I would love to do and do all the testing. I mean, no matter what I'm doing, I love hearing from you guys. I really do. I mean, so I look forward to hearing from you on this build, the base package, and either you'll see you may see this, I'm going to post this after the tournament. So if you haven't seen the tournament, definitely watch it after, see my game, and game or games, we'll see, and then come back and comment on this video, and then I'll do sort of an after action report, and maybe I'll sort of discuss some of the comments as well in that video, and do a bit of analysis on my play and some afterthoughts, because I would like to go in this tournament again. I mean, if I get another chance, I really love this tabletop tournament. I love the format so much, because it suits me, because I just play the Dawei, and that's the only faction I really feel comfortable with. And I played in Shadows tournaments but I always do pretty poorly when I'm not playing the Dawei. So this is my type of tournament, my type of format, but I watch, there's some really, really good players who play in this tournament, so it's gonna be tough no matter what. So I'm looking forward to it. Anyways, hope you found that interesting, and I will see you soon.